Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Seminole Sidelines podcast, the Osceola's main podcast. My name is Nick Carlisle. I'll be filling in as host today. I am joined by head editor Bob Ferrante and senior staff writer Curt Weiler, doing a special edition of the Seminole Sidelines. Well, every edition of Seminole Sidelines is special if you ask me, but we've got to talk some baseball today. A bit of a pop-up show for us guys, because Florida State baseball has been soaring far and above I think all of our expectations for this season when you think about it, and they just capped off another win last night at Florida. 12-8 was the final score. It's the first time that the Seminoles have won in the new ballpark at Gainesville, and let's face it, this was a huge win for this program in year two under Link Jarrett. Curt, I kind of want to come to you first. You were there in Gainesville last night. Just talk a little bit about what this win means for the Seminoles at this point, considering that in recent years, the Seminoles have had chances to win at Gainesville and have kind of let that slip away a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, frankly, the 15th game, the 15th win in a row validated everything from the first 14 games. I think there would have been the notion, if, as great as they've looked through 14 games, if they go down there last night, if they go down there Tuesday night, we're recording this on Wednesday, and lay an egg, and it's the same old, and they make mistakes in the field, and they make base running mistakes, and they strike out or don't come through in key hitting situations, and it looks like it has the last it brings into question everything you've seen through the first 3 weeks of the season. You just say, like, was that a factor of what their schedule, and did they really benefit from really not playing an especially great team yet? That Florida pitching staff is a mess right now. I don't want to say, I mean, they have a few good starters, but on the whole, I mean, they're playing a lot of freshmen, and those freshmen do not seem ready for prime time. I mean, their staff ERA, I think, is probably back over 6 or close to it after last night. I think it was 5.43 going into the night, but it was more of the same. And I mean, it is fun to watch them play baseball right now because they're doing all the little things well. I mean, in my decade on the beat, Bob, and it's been longer for you than me, I haven't seen a team field this well, run the bases this well, play the game the right way. As cliche as that is to say, I said it to someone on our board this morning, it's cliche, but they do just play the game the right way, and they're a lot of fun to watch, and they look like they're having fun playing baseball.
No, absolutely. Especially when you think about some of the little things that just have not been done well over the last few seasons at Florida State. We're talking running the base pass efficiently. We're talking about the short game coming up and being used quite frequently by this offense in the opening couple weeks of the season. A lot more bunting, efficient bunting by this team. Bob, we were kind of talking earlier before the show just about the offense in general and how good it's been over the first opening weeks of the season. And we were going back through a bunch of different, like, really good hitting Florida State teams. And as you can see on the graphic, I mean, this is the best start that this team has had since 2013. And they've had 7 or more runs in every single ball game. They've been able to hit, whether it's leadoff 1 or all the way down to the 9 slot.
Yeah, I think, listening to Sully last night, he was pretty disconsolate about, the state of their pitching staff, but also I think praising where Florida State is, as a lineup. And he said it wasn't just the top 4 guys. It wasn't just James Tibbs in the big home run. It was 1 through 9. One of the big numbers I think sticks with me is I don't remember how many times last year I would ask Link about how the hitters didn't come through with runners in scoring position. And Tuesday night, 6 of 16 with runners in scoring position. That's pretty darn good, right? And it's against Florida arms. So these are maybe not the best Florida arms at their stage in their development right now, but it's really good to see that kind of production.
When's the last time you think that we've had a Florida State team that's been able to consistently hit throughout the order? In recent years, it's really been a top-heavy order. Jaime Ferrer and Tibbs are entering their 3rd season now, and in addition to some guys like Robbie Martin is a name that comes to mind for me. Once you kind of get past the cleanup hitters at 4 and 5 slots, 6 through 8 and 9 could have been a little bit iffy. When's the last time that you think they've had that consistency all throughout the lineup?
I mean, I think it predates me. Bob, you can speak to this better than me. Not like my life, but my time on the beat. Like, I don't think there's been one since 2015, which was my first year I really covered and followed Florida State baseball. I know, talking to someone who's covered it longer, Bob, and you can speak to this too. You're going back to, maybe a 2012 era James Ramsey team, maybe even a team of maybe a 2008 Buster Posey team. Like there were some loaded lineups there. You might even look back at like the 90s and some of those teams. I mean, when they're really the heyday of 11's time. But it's been a minute.
Yeah, I think I would agree. It's been that long. There were some really good College World Series hitting teams.
Yeah.
2017, 2019. I don't think they went 1 through 9. But here's just an example of the 2019 lineup in the College World Series. Mike Salvatore, Reese Albert, Drew Mendoza, Robbie Martin, Matt Nelson, drops off a little bit here, Carter Smith, J.C. Flowers, Nander DeSatis, Tim Becker had that really good postseason. So it was
that you had to start good. Tim Becker speaks to, like, I mean, that a walk-on became your hero or one of your heroes in that postseason run speaks to, I mean, even goes beyond 1 through 9, like having a Max Williams, you're either sitting most games, you're sitting Holbrook or West, like normally one of them catches and one of them doesn't play. I think you could DH the other one sometimes, but it goes even. I think I like some of the freshmen, but there's just not really room for guys like Cal Fisher, who I think could be future stars for this team.
Cal Fisher has one of my favorate walk-up songs this year.
100%.
Islands in the Stream is fantastic.
I'm going to ask him what the inspiration is the first time we talk to him.
That's not something that you would think for an 18-year-old, 19-year-old. I believe he's from Florida, isn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
I want to let him know too and be like, it's not in judgment. I appreciate this every time it comes up. Like, I'm not asking but why? Because it is a very un-baseball like walk-up song. Again, not a complaint, but when everyone else has got hype up music, I will say I did on the ride down to Gainesville yesterday bump that song and it got stuck in my head. I will admit to that on the car ride down.
Well, speaking of good walk-up songs, I think another guy who's a good walk-up song is Cam Smith, who's walking up to Shook Ones Part 2 this year, which is definitely a hype song. And, it's suiting him well. He's a very hot hitter right now, batting .485, 20 RBIs, 4 home runs, and a .545 on-base percentage. A lot of talk, or I guess speculation in the offseason as to whether or not this is one of the guys that would stick through that first rough year. Potentially go and get a better opportunity elsewhere, but he stuck to Florida State. He stuck with everything, and Curt, he is having one hell of a start to a season here.
Yeah, I mean, until I think he was 2 for 5 or so. I think he might have been hitting 500 going into yesterday's game, or close to it, if not. I mean, he's still right there at 485. I've been so impressed with the all-around hitting approach. It felt like a guy like Cam, and you see it a lot when he was a freshman last year. It takes a little time. I think it takes a little time, and B, they've never played that many games. High school seasons are shorter. Travel ball seasons are shorter. I think you see freshmen often hit a wall, but I really felt like he was coming to his own by the end of the season. He kind of hit the wall, and then I thought at a certain point got past the wall, and he has just picked up right where he left off. It's a shame for Florida State that Cam is a draft-eligible sophomore, and is a guy who could very well be a first-round pick. This is going to be his last year. You're only going to get 2 years of him, but he has gotten off to quite the start to kind of make the most of what is going to be his last year at Florida State. I feel like he goes opposite field for about half of his hits so far this year. It's regularly, I'll put in the game thread, opposite field, Cam Smith. Opposite field, Cam Smith. He just sprays the ball, and that's what Link wants.
Yeah, I think other than Cam Smith, in terms of young returning sophomores to this team, probably the other most impressive player on the team has been Jamie Arnold, who has come back after a great Cape Cod League MVP performance where he was putting on a show, and it's like, okay, we can see the transition from year 1 to year 2 for this guy now. And 0 earned runs in 22 inning pitch, perfect record so far, team leading 32 strikeouts. We heard Link talk really highly of Arnold coming back into fall ball, and now we are really starting to see not only the maturity, but the velocity and the command that maybe wasn't necessarily there last year, Bob, kind of coming to fruition for him.
And 5 walks. I mean, let's be honest. It does start by not getting yourself in trouble. So it's the strikeouts. The ball in play isn't as much of an issue for the infielders, the outfielders. I didn't really see Jamie Arnold being capable of taking this kind of jump, both with velocity, with the strikeout numbers. But I did feel like he could be a number 2 starter. I think it's just been a higher end wow so far in this season than I really expected, honestly.
It speaks to how far Florida State's pitching staff has come over the last few years, and kind of, I mean, I think what linked Jarrett and Micah Posey, as long as Florida State's lucky enough to have him, feels like with the year they're having, that clock, we're not sure how long it is of how long he'll be a pitching coach here before he might get a head coaching opportunity. But it speaks to how far they've come that your Saturday guy is a lefty who throws 96 miles per hour. You know, I mean, that's like, there have been years where Florida State's been lucky to have one guy who throws 96, let alone having two in the weekend rotation and having that luxury. And Jamie is, I think, a big beneficiary of the new Florida State pitching lab, which I wrote about in the preseason. And I'd encourage y'all to go check out the story on if you haven't read it, because I think it's some really interesting behind-the-scenes stuff in there.
Yeah, and especially I think Connor Whitaker is another name that he's been kind of pushed out of the Sunday starter slot, not of his own performance or anything, but just due to unfortunate circumstances. He's had to go on Tuesdays. He's had to go on Wednesdays. Looks like Link and the staff are leaning him back into the Sunday slot. He's been really, really consistent for them this season. Sure, a couple of runs allowed per outing. But Bob, how important is that for you to have that consistent Sunday guy who can flex to the midweek if possible?
I have to admit, I was kind of torn here because I thought, man, are you sure you don't want to run Connor Whitaker out there against Florida 3 times? Because what fans really care about is the rivalry win over Florida. Now, the flip side is what helps you get a regional host, potentially. We're getting way ahead of our skis here, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have a rotation of Weiler, Arnold, and Whitaker, it gives you a really good shot at winning 2 out of 3 and a decent shot at sweeping some of these ACC series, which then puts your RPI in a position to where it says, okay, Florida State has earned this seed or this opportunity to host. It's 15 games in. I don't want to get too much on the hype train, but I think that's what Whitaker does bring potentially if it plays out this well.
You're seeing so much nowadays. It feels like in today's college baseball, teams are struggling to find a Sunday starter. I think I look back at I think you're going to see a lot of, I think last Sunday we were laughing at, I think NC State beat Boston College 18-16. I think it's by that point in the weekend, it's just who do we have left that we can throw out there? I cannot fathom many teams will have a better Sunday starter left in that than Connor Whitaker. It feels like Florida State has an upper hand there. I mean, he's not the flashiest, but he's just reliable. You're going to get 5 innings from him or more, and he's probably not going to give up more than 3 or 4 runs very often. That's just kind of what Connor gives you.
And that's something that it feels like this team also has not had recently. Yep. Carson Montgomery was a kid that for multiple seasons, we all were like, well, if he can take that next step, he's going to be a pretty solid Sunday starter. And whether it was something mechanic-wise that he just couldn't get down, I always thought it was an above-the-shoulders thing with Carson. But now he's no longer with the program. And Whitaker, who was one of the people that, was kind of in that, I guess, flow last season of pitchers that were kind of moving all around while that entire pitching staff was trying to find its roles and trying to find itself over the course of the season. He's now in a pretty solid spot. I do want to kind of circle back around to the Florida game really quickly and talk about the pitching performance, because we talked about, how good the batting was and how good the batting potentially will be as long as they are on this hitting streak. But Andrew Armstrong came out through 3 innings, 2 earned runs and 3 Ks in his start at Florida, really got them off to a good start in that one. And, even though, to your point, Curt, it's are you sure you don't want to run Whitaker out there? Armstrong is a guy that's been in this program for a couple of years, and he got the job done.
He's a senior. I every time I see that, I'm kind of it throws me off just because
he doesn't look like a senior.
Well, and it feels like he hasn't been around that long, but he's appeared in a lot of games, and he's another one where it's not the flashiest, but he's become quite the pitcher, and I think he's up to over 7 innings and hasn't allowed an earned run yet this season. And I think, obviously he got a delayed start this year where he was the one guy when they were trying to ramp guys up that it didn't take it first. So he was a bit delayed, missed the first weekend, but he's really come on strong. And it's funny, Link, last night, I kind of asked, what role do you have in mind for him going forward? And he kind of said, I don't know, but he was very complimentary of what Andrew was able to give them.
Yeah, possibly could be a midweek guy because I didn't think he had thrown that many innings in a start, but I kind of forgot. He threw 5 innings against Mercer last year, threw 6, I think, out of the pen against Louisville. He has the opportunity to stretch it out a little bit more. He just hadn't been stretching out that far this early in the year, and that's why it was a relatively short opening role for him on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and I think that doors have definitely opened for him a little bit, especially because Yoel Tejeda Jr. kind of spun out of his starting spot on the track, to where now, even though Connor Whitaker was filling that midweek role, now if they're trying to push him back into Sundays, which is very telling that they are, now Army has the chance to kind of solidify his spot there if need be. I do want to defer to you though, Bob, on this. And Curt, you can chime in as well. I think when we take a look at the overall character and composition of this team, if there's one thing to be potentially worried about, it's the bullpen heading into later innings, because there's so many young arms there. And it was kind of an issue last year as well, but it's definitely something that as the season goes on, I think your bread and butter in making sure that you squeak out some of these wins, especially in conference play, is how confident your young arms are and how much time they get. And against Florida, Hudson Rowan and Brady Lauk, they did give up a couple runs, some of them earned, some of them unearned, but that's a talented Florida lineup as well. But I mean, Hudson Rowan was throwing 95 the other night, and that's certainly impressive. I guess my question to the both of you, and Bob, you can go first, is that the key to unlocking this Florida State team? It feels weird to say unlocking when they're 15-0. And again, we don't want to get too applauditory and get it too ahead of ourselves here, but is that the key to really truly unlocking the potential of this team, is how far the young arms can carry the bullpen?
I think that's the big question mark, just based on their lack of experience so far on the college level. Now, a guy like Brady Lauk, he had Tommy John surgery. I don't think he pitched his senior year of high school. He got thrown out there Tuesday night, 8,000 people in the ballpark on the road against Florida. Tough lineup, tough situation. Yeah, it's not going to look good, but you want to see how he fights in those kind of situations. Yes, you're going to throw a lot of younger arms out there. Like you mentioned, Hudson Rowan, his stuff is crazy good. The control may not be there. The hit by pitch numbers are going to be an issue. You're going to have to kind of eat those situations and hope that your bats give you a nice cushion to where you can let them kind of feel it out. I would say the other thing that might play out long-term is if this team is like a number 1 seed or maybe even a 2, you start taking care of business in a regional, you get days off in the College World Series. The bullpen isn't as hugely a factor, but for right now, when you have midweeks, when you have maybe 4 or 5 games, yeah, I think we have to see what the bullpen really looks like just to see, can Florida State kind of keep this run going.
I think it was big that Florida State, built the early lead and got in the situation even about responding when Florida kind of cut into it and made it a game again. Because if that game is closer, if that game stayed 7-5, I can't imagine Florida State throws in Hudson Rowan and Brady Lauk. I think that was a factor of the more comfortable lead where they know this is a grand slam doesn't even tie the game right now. That gives you as a coach, I have to imagine, more comfort to say this is an adverse situation. This is a crowd that is being loud against you, probably the most people they've ever pitched in front of. I think, but what's crazy too that I didn't notice in the moment, they had their mistakes. They both allowed an earned run. Brady Lauk's pretty tough with the play in center by Diamez Ross. I think 1 run would have scored anyways. The second one was pretty tough for Lauk. But they recorded 7 outs, and all of them were strikeouts. And they struck out. I think both of them might have struck out. Jack Caglianone, Colby Shelton, one of them, I think Hudson Rowan struck out. They were striking out the good hitters in that Florida lineup. And that Florida lineup, I do think, is a little top-heavy. It's definitely more top-heavy than Florida State's, but they have some of the best hitters in the country. I think Colby Shelton and Jack Caglianone have 14 combined homers this year already and didn't have a huge game by any stretch last night. And I think a lot of that in later innings was what those two did. I don't think, could this bullpen, keep Florida State from being national title good? Yeah, I guess. But I feel like I talked about Sunday starters, I kind of think bullpens in college baseball just aren't great as a whole. You look at midweek games too, they're often high scoring. So I kind of feel yes, if you can get this from them. Link's challenged some guys. He said, he wanted to see more from Noah Short. I think he's wanted to see more from a Joe Charles. I think
Matt Saucer. Those types.
Yeah, Saucer's another freshman for sure. And there are some other guys. I'm not coming up with everybody off the top of my head. Gavin Adams, the loss of him hurts. The fact that you probably doesn't look like you're going to have Jacob Marlowe this year Hurts. Those are two guys I think you were counting on having something from, and that's going to throw those freshmen into bigger roles. But how they handled last night can only, to me, be viewed as a pretty big net positive for these guys can be counted on in some big situations against some good lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to preview a little bit this weekend. I know you'll probably have a baseball preview story up once we get a chance to talk to Link Curt. But obviously, Notre Dame coming in this weekend. So maybe this is just the creation of stories for the sake of creating stories. But, a win against Florida and then a theoretical series win. Again, we're not there yet, but a theoretical series win against Link's former school. Former coaching school anyways. Just how much do you think something like that would propel this team moving forward, Bob?
I think honestly, you look at a Notre Dame team that's 10-5, and we haven't done a super deep dive on them, but this is one where you feel like you need to get 2 out of 3.
They got swept last week at VT.
Mm-hmm.
So the opportunity's there, right? I mean, these are the ones where you got to take 2 out of 3, because then you don't want to be counting games down the stretch against the better ranked teams and saying these are must wins. These are must wins. If you take care of business in March against the unranked teams, then you're not sweating it as much in May.
And they have certainly been taking care of business. I kind of just want to end out here, pose a final question. Where do you guys think that this team is most improved overall? Is it the pitching, since Link brought in so many guys in the portal, or is it the infield? Because, hey, look, the infield has been a pretty sore spot for this team the last couple of years. You've had Ferrer and Tibbs and now Diamez Ross in the outfield pretty consistently over the past 2 seasons, but it's always been the infield. The infield errors is something that you always kind of don't want to look at, but you kind of have to acknowledge. Where is the most improved part of this team in your guys' eyes so far?
I'm not declining the question, but I'll say confidence. Can I just outright say it's a more
hey,
team?
I think that's a fair answer, because, and it's something you should definitely point to, because you take a look at these teams above the shoulders, the body language is so much better. You see them rooting for each other. There's no weight over the team like there is when you're on an umpteenth millionth degree losing streak like they were last year. So I think that's a fair answer. Curt, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a good answer. I'm gonna say this now. Maybe I think I might be speaking to some fans out there. Maybe y'all will agree with me. I never lost confidence in Link Jarrett here, but after year 1, there was a bit in my head of thinking is this just a situation where it looks like it's going to be a great thing, and there's maybe a pressure that comes from Link Jarrett coming home to his alma mater, all that, where just things never sync up and it just never got rolling. And I think I feel confident now saying that's not going to be the case with how well this season started. But I think it's just generally everything Link has brought to this team. I mean, I think you talk about the infield, and what they've done offensively is great. He's also, he's taken Drew Farrow, who played shortstop last year and committed quite a few errors, and made him a real good second baseman who hasn't committed an error since opening day. He's committed 1 error all year, and he had never really played second base before. He'd always been a shortstop. I think the base running, that would just been, how long have we lamented, Bob, the base running mistakes that Florida State made? And last night, to me, was the biggest evidence of how many, just the smart extra bases, the aggressive send on the error in the second inning that got Florida State an extra run. Just they steal bases and it often leads to, the hustle double by Drew Farrow. They steal bases, and that often leads to stealing runs, and that's how you win close games. And frankly, they haven't had many close games yet. But we all think the close games are coming. They're going to. They're not going to score 7 runs every game the whole season. That's just not there. There are going to be bad weeks. There are going to be weeks where they have to grind some out. And just how vastly improved they are in so many of the facets that I feel like are a direct representation of Link Jarrett are why I feel good about them even when that inevitable slump hits.
Your Seminoles kick off the 2024 football season in Dublin, Ireland, as they face the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Join fellow Florida State fans on a trip you won't soon forget. Game tickets for the August 24th matchup are now available through Florida State Athletics Ticket Office and selling fast. Visit Seminoles2Ireland.com. That's Seminoles, the number 2, Ireland.com. And go Noles!
Well, thanks, guys, for joining me today on this edition of Seminole Sidelines, and thank you all so much for watching. If you have not done so already, make sure that you subscribe to the Osceola YouTube channel. It's just that little button and bell right there at the bottom of the player. It should be like right around there. And if you want to see more content from all of us, make sure you go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com for more. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye-bye.